Awake living into uncharted territory together, accelerating your wellness path, plus your interconnectivity at the same time.
It's not your grandma's Ayurveda, but it kind of is.
It's the Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman.
A sex-craved, overweight culture that is desperately afraid of eating anything to refuel them, like, bread. Crazy. But keep trying, and I'm not really doing a very good job of making a dent. I think people have already decided wheat's bad. It's been and it's unbelievable to me. So I keep chipping away.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I mean, I hear you. Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show. On today's show, Dr. John Douillard. He's definitely one of my favorite Ayurvedic dudes out there. He's amazing because he's just super down to earth. He's raised 6 children. He's been a chiropractor and an Ayurvedic medicine doctor practitioner for a long time, and he just really nails the science. And so if you're listening, you're going to get an earful on the science behind a lot of different things. We hit on a lot of different topics, including ketogenesis, including the paleo diet, including eating wheat or not eating wheat and fermented foods. But the overall gist of the episode is on tuning into your body this summer and what you need to do, what you should be focusing on to experience a lot of connectivity in your physiology. So stay tuned.
Remake your body into a high-integrity temple at your attractive body weight while experiencing the energy of a 20-year-old, but with the intelligence of a yoga guru, doing it the holistic way, using Ayurveda. Make your skin glow, your eyes sparkle, and your entire being will emit an overall vibrance. You're not just going to lose weight or look good for everyone else, but you're going to drop into a deep body integrity and inner love that emits through you to those in your circle of care and inspires your family and friends to live healthier lives. That is what we do in Living Ayurveda. If you want to feel amazing from the inside out, go to yogahealer.com/Living Ayurveda. That's one word, LIVINGAYURVEDA, and find out more.
For those who don't know, Dr. John Douillard, he's at lifespa.com. He's a globally recognized leader in the field of natural health and Ayurveda and sports medicine. And when he created lifespa.com, it's since become the leading Ayurvedic health and wellness resource on the web with over 5 million views on YouTube. I find it an incredible, helpful resource. We go there all the time. In a lot of our Ayurvedic forums, we show little videos, these little 5-minute videos of Dr. John Douillard teaching something or another. So in today's episode, he dives into summer and really what is going on, how to naturally sink into eating well for yourself and living in line with nature's rhythms. You're going to learn a lot about melatonin and serotonin and daylight and what is up and how to sleep better and how to experience a lot more effective digestibility in your day-to-day eating. It's totally nuts. John's been in practice over 30 years and has seen over 100,000 patients. That to me is mind-blowing in itself. So stay tuned for Dr. John Douillard. All right, here we go. I'm here with Dr. John Douillard, and we're going to talk about Ayurveda and summer and what goes on. So I just wanted to start by asking you a little bit about what you find you eat. What are some of your go-to meals in summer?
Well, lately what I've been doing a lot is I have a garden, and so I'll wake up in the morning. The first thing, I'll get up usually pretty early, around 5, go into my garden and do my little garden thing. And I'll usually come back with stuff that I'll eat for breakfast. Could be kale, lettuce, peppermint, rosemary. I have beautiful rosemary flowers that came in early this year, lavender flowers, so I'll put lavender flowers. So that's generally what I do is I'll take stuff out of the garden. I'll make that my breakfast. However, I also have a berry patch this year, which I'm getting already, raspberries and strawberries. So I'm super excited about that. So whenever they go pretty quick, right? So whenever they're available, I'll eat those as well. But also, I'm also a really big fan of unraveling the nemesis of our time, which people don't realize is something called bile sludge, which is the liver becoming congested due to years and years and years of processed foods. And there are these foods called cholagogues, or foods that specifically decongest your liver and your gallbladder. And so some of my absolute go-tos would be like the spring and even into the summer would be like a beet, apple, and celery juice that we would blend up in the morning and have that. I love that. So that's sort of something that I would definitely do earlier in the spring, but even into the summertime for sure, because even though the beets are a little bit on the heating side, they flush your liver and your gallbladder. That's what takes the heat to the toilet. And if you don't get, if that's congested, then all that heat goes up into your head, causes allergies and sinus problems. I used to have a history of allergies and hay fever. I don't have a stitch of it any longer, which is, I'm hoping it's because my liver is cleaner. We'll see. But so those are some of the things that I really love this time of year. We're not really in the fruits yet, but they're coming, you know. But apples are really cool because they're bitter and they're sweet and they're astringent. You know, so in the summertime we want sweet taste to cool you down, bitter taste to cool you down, and astringent taste to cool you down. So obviously at the end of the summer, apples are like the perfect solution to all of our heat-related woes, right? But in the summertime or even in the early springs, the spring tastes are pungent, bitter, and astringent. So you get 2 out of the 3. And if you get a less sweet apple, like Granny Smith or something that's not so super sweet, you have a really good kapha food as well. And that's how Ayurveda does such a great job of giving us foods from around the world that we can actually eat and not have to be restricted only to eating seasonal foods. And as you know, I'm a big fan of seasonal eating, massive fan of seasonal eating. But if I only said you can only eat the stuff out of your garden, people would hate me. You know, it would be terrible. People would be like, you know, they would like, you know, there's nothing
it's
to
not
eat.
even that possible. I mean, that's the thing is we've gotten so far, like where I am, I'm in farm country here on the Idaho-Wyoming border, but it's all this like monocrop, you know, I mean, we're so far from having any sort of semblance of a local ecosystem that's able to provide the like food and variety. And there's so little knowledge about native plants. So it's like on a number of fronts, like we are now, because we're in a global economy, we have to eat globally in certain ways as much as we're trying to recover eating locally, and we're trying to restore our ecosystems and trying to grow a variety of crops, you know, more in like the homesteader variety. But it's so weird to me to drive through, I'm in farm country and just see like mono, you know, it's like these mono hybrid wheat and barley and potatoes, and they just go on for literally like hundreds and hundreds of acres. And then you see this little old homesteader property that's kind of fallen into decay, right? It was like old decay. And there's like a few little apple trees, and there's some chokecherry trees, and there's the little barn with the little sheds falling apart where they used to have the chickens and the pigs and the cat. Right. And it's like, we're just so far from any sort of semblance of what was recognizable as like a holistic ecosystem way of living.
There was a study done that showed that in the last 50 years, the diversity of the food that we eat on this planet has decreased by 56%. So exactly what you said. Even the indigenous people around the world, people are eating more and more and more of the same foods, again, highly processed foods, which is another reason why I love Ayurveda and I love Ayurvedic herbs, particularly if they're the whole herb, not an extracted herb. The extracted herbs are sterile. They have no bugs in them. And part of what we're trying to do from an Ayurvedic perspective, from a microbiome perspective, is to change the microbiome from winter to summer to spring. So when we're eating foods that are in season, you get if they're organic, you're getting all those microbes to support a new seasonal microbiome. But the reality is that the amount of foods that we can even get in our garden, and I go to my garden every day, but I still don't go in the spring to dig up the burdock roots and the dandelion roots and do that as much as I could or should. I just don't have the time. So that's why I love, I do take a lot of seasonal Ayurvedic herbs because they're loaded with microbes. And the new science is suggesting that those are the new probiotics that are giving us the diversity that we desperately need. There's people walking around in our Western world who have 2 or 3 strains of microbes in their gut. You're supposed to have thousands. So the diversity is really an issue. So how do you get that diversity back when all the foods are the same? And if you eat processed, pre-digested, sterile food, you'll get none of that, which means we become more and more and more vulnerable. And something that I talked about in my Eat Wheat book, I mean, there's, which is all about how to eat hard to digest foods again, Kate. It's more important, not so much about eating wheat. It's just that wheat has a hard to digest anti-nutrient on it, and so do many foods. They're protected from other bugs in nature. It's a war out there, bugs trying to take over other bugs, and so they create protective barriers to protect themselves. And if you can't digest those foods, the science shows that people who actually were eating gluten-free food compared to eating wheat had 4 times as much mercury in their blood as people who actually ate wheat, less good bacteria, more bad bacteria than people who ate wheat. And another study, people who actually were gluten-free had less killer T cells, a measure of immunity, than people who ate wheat, suggesting that those hard-to-digest foods are the irritants for our intestinal skin to amp up our gut immunity, which makes up 80% of our immune system as a whole. So if we say, well, we killed our microbiome, it's less diverse, we can't eat much of anything, so now when I eat those foods I can't digest, so I throw them out of my diet thinking I'm doing myself a favor, what you're doing is you're taking away the absolute necessary thing that our intestinal tract needs to trigger an immune response. And that we're seeing is people are becoming more and more immune vulnerable as we start eating more and more processed foods or sterile foods, or just taking wheat out or dairy out or corn out or grains out or nuts or seeds or beans. I mean, how many people do you see these days who literally can't digest nuts, seeds, beans, grains, legumes? It's like I've never seen this.
And their kids come with like this list now. I mean, it goes on and on.
I've never seen this. I've been in practice for 35 years. I've never seen the level of digestive, atrophy that we're seeing today. It's a really scary thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it absolutely parallels the lack of food that's available, right? When we see it, even like the gluten-free explosion of processed foods, it's insane. And it's insane what those things are made of. And, it's just such a weird food culture. I think that John Robbins and his son have it right with this whole idea that like we're living in like a toxic food nation, like we're living in a toxic food universe. And it's true. And for us to realize it and take responsibility for it and take responsibility for like, okay, I got my own gut. I got my own microbiome. I got my own ecosystem. I've got my own choices, and I got to kind of reroute some of my lifestyle around what needs to happen for me to thrive. It's going to come down to the level of personal responsibility, and not blaming, necessarily the what's out there.
Yeah, go
ahead.
There's the industry, the gluten-free industry is now $16 billion a year. That's definitely affecting the choices people make in the grocery stores. Like you said, toxic world. There's 4 billion pounds of toxic chemicals dumped in the American environment every single year. And our ability to digest well is linked to our ability to detoxify well. So if you find yourself taking stuff out of your diet because you're not digesting well, it's a temporary solution, but never addressing the bigger problem, which is your inability to digest, deliver an immune supporting nutritional palate, plus be able to detox the toxic world we live in. But that's going to catch up to us in 10, 20, 30 years. And that's exactly what happened when they took cholesterol out of our diet. They replaced it with vegetable oils, preserved polyunsaturated vegetable oils as preservatives. It took 20 or 30 years for us to see obesity, diabetes, breaking down digestive system, and depression becoming epidemic. We're doing the exact same thing over again. It's just amazing how difficult it is for us to learn these lessons when money's involved,
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So more of an Ayurvedic dork question. I'll put it in that category. So I eat fermented foods year round. Like I make a lot of like small batch fermented foods, and we eat them year round. And we definitely eat more in the fall when we want more of the sour taste and we want more of the, just the laxative effect and want more of the heating effect. But I find, in terms of microbiome, like I find like one of the barometers I use is like my kid is she's thriving, right? And she craves like a little bit of sauerkraut now and then. And I'm not going to be like, no, you shouldn't have, it's summertime, you shouldn't have fermented foods. And when I look at cultures around the globe, like they didn't stop eating fermented foods during different seasons. They might have less of them or have less heat in them, have less peppers, have less garlic or onions or whatnot in them. But they would have a little bit of that throughout the year. And I find a lot of Ayurvedic practitioners be like, oh, don't eat any sour foods in the summer. And they kind of miss that sort of like the 6 taste is a daily thing. So what's your take on small batch fermented foods in the summer?
Well, exactly what you're saying. It's I've been saying this for a long time. Fermented foods, drinking a 20-ounce jar of kombucha, which is sort of the American way now as a beverage, That's a heck of a lot of lactic acid fermented food, which is, very acidic. And of course, that is very beneficial for us in the wintertime. But even in the wintertime, traditional cultures did it as a condiment. It was a small portion. So I just think it's not all or none. When I wrote my 3-season diet book and all about eating with the seasons, it wasn't like don't eat this and don't eat that. It's eat more of the foods that are in season and forget about it. Start thinking about what you can eat more of as opposed to what you shouldn't eat. So more of those fermented foods are naturally occurring in the winter when we would want to preserve our vegetables. And it has a lot to do with where you live on the planet. If you're living in Florida or in a warmer climate, how much fermenting of foods do you really need to actually get the vegetables, which is the regional reason they did it in the first place, was to actually have something to eat in the wintertime. But now with the completely disturbed microbiome, getting those microbes in small portions throughout the year, it does make great sense. And you can select the type of fermented food that you eat. And of course, you can adjust the portions. And of course, you have to plug in, then overlay finally your body type, who you are as if you're a Pitta body type in the summertime, eating a 20-ounce jar of kombucha,
every day, right? Because a lot of people do it every day. They'll just
coffee for breakfast, a glass of wine for night, at nighttime, and a kombucha during the day at lunch. You just took a lot of very heating. You're starting to stack all that Pitta, and that becomes a problem. Nature's saying, I'm trying to give you celery and kale and greens and apples and all these things to cool you down, but I can't compete with a 20-ounce jar of kombucha and 3 cups of coffee and a glass of wine at night. You can't keep that balance, and that's what it's about.
Yeah. So people that are drinking a lot of coffee during the summer and having a lot of, they might get like skin issues. They might have just a lot of, like waking up around that 2 a.m. with a lot of stress or a lot going on through their mind. And what other symptoms do you see really tied to overheating in the summer?
Well, I love the words for them. Heartburn, which is, of course, an indicator something's really hot. Inflammation has the word flame in it. Burned out, irritable. Arthritis is an indication of itis. It's an inflammatory type condition. Skin rashes. So, most of these Pitta-related issues come with sort of names and terminology that sort of describe an increase of heat. It's hard to ignore them. And even when a child gets a fever and they get overheated, the body naturally responds to that by creating looser stool or gives them diarrhea. And the body's way of dissipating heat is to actually see a looser stool kick in, like diarrhea for a fever. And that happens to a lot of people who are Pitta constitutional types. And you see that their stools become sort of on the looser side as they reach their 50s and their 60s, as they reach the end of the life cycle of Pitta, which is around 50 to 60. And we know that at the end of every cycle, at the end of winter and summer and spring, you're going to see the accumulation of winter cold, summer heat, and spring congestion. At the end of the life cycle of Pitta, around 50 to 60, you're going to see the accumulation of heat in the body. So it's the hottest time of your life, and that's when the body says, I'm going to amp up the diarrhea effect to get rid of the heat. So the stools go from being either normal or sometimes even constipated to being on the looser side. That's a classic example of someone who's Pitta, whose body is doing everything they can to dissipate the heat to help avoid internal inflammation, migraine headaches, arthritis, skin rashes elsewhere in the body.
Yeah. And those, a lot of people don't put together. I found when I've taught like Ayurveda for summer classes, people have these big ahas of like, oh, that's why I get migraines in the summer, or that's why by the end of the summer, it feels like I have no more well to dig from, like there's just no more energy in the physiology because a lot of the heat is just stacked up, really over the course of the year. But then by the end of the summer, it's just, the body's just done, right? There's just that sense of there's no more to give from.
And what people don't realize is that the digestive strength changes throughout the year as well. As we're seasonal beings, we're circadian beings. And in the summertime, the digestive strength is actually much weaker than it is in the wintertime. Enzymes like amylase, which is an enzyme that we genetically evolved to create our own amylase about 2 million years ago, specifically an enzyme for digesting grains and starches. A deficiency in that enzyme is linked to Baker's asthma, which is an allergy to wheat. That enzyme amylase is specifically amps up in your and my body every fall and every winter to help us digest those starches. And it decreases in the spring and the summer when those starches are just generally not available. We know that the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest nervous system, it increases digestively in the winter and decreases in the summer. So as we march into the summer now, we have to realize that, you know what? My digestive strength is a little bit more delicate than it was in the dead of winter when I wanted that heat to heat me up and insulate and protect me and digest the nuts and the grains and the seeds and all those foods in larger quantities. Where in the summertime, the foods are cooked on the vine. They're cooked, all summer long, all day long in these long days, and they're getting baked and baked and cooked and cooked. So the foods are cooked for us. We don't need to put those foods inside and cook them inside of here because we evolved as Homo sapiens. The ability, one of the reasons why they think we're here is because we have the ability to dissipate heat better than any other mammal on the planet. And as a result, we're able to persistence hunt and do things like that. But part of that is that we don't put a bunch of hot barbecue meats and things in our system in the summertime because it was because there was so much stuff coming out of the ground. It's the seasons are so beautiful. We go, and people don't realize this, we should be living feast and famine cycles. And the feast happens at the end of the summer when the starches and the nuts and the seeds and the legumes and the fruits are overwhelming us with nutrition, overwhelming us with high density nutrition. And we eat pig out on that. And that extra nutrition gets stored as insulating fat and reserve energy for the famine, which is coming around the corner in the winter and in the spring, particularly spring, because there's everything is gone by then. And you're really struggling, digging up weird stuff out of the ground and trying to make tea out of it. That's what we do in the spring. So we are hardwired for that. Our melatonin levels in our brain are connected to those light-dark cycles, which are linked to our microbiome, which change seasonally. The detail and the intricacy of those cycles of melatonin and the light-dark cycles and our digestion and our microbiome and the foods that nature provides for us are so lockstep together that at the very least we should do is sort of think, why don't I just eat a little bit more of those foods in season? That's what you probably know about our pre-season diet challenge. We put out a grocery list, a seasonal recipe list, a monthly recipe list, a monthly grocery list, and a superfood list for every month of the year for free. People can sign up for it. It's called the 3-Season Diet Challenge at lifespod.com. It's completely free. And you get everything you need for July, August, September. We even have a edible flower packet where you get all the information about what flowers are in bloom in June, July, August, September, what they do, how to eat them. And you get this whole, which is really amazing. And eating flowers is something in America we don't think eating flowers. But it's such a
so sattvic, yeah.
Europeans been eating flowers forever.
Yeah, well, humans have. In the second half of this interview, we talk about the ketogenic diet and the bulletproof diet and the paleo diet and what's going on with all of that and how to have that in the context of the Ayurvedic way of eating seasonally. So stay tuned. You'll learn an earful, and it'll help you set the context of, should you be gluten-free or not, and what's going on in the, what is going to be the swing of the pendulum back from the gluten-free revolution in 20, 30 years. Stay tuned. Hey, it's Kate, and I have a free Ayurveda training at yogahealer.com/Ayurveda. So if you want to unclog your body and clean up your inner temple, and if you want to get your temple running on the right schedule at the right rhythm so that you sparkle, you should check this training out. It's just at yogahealer.com/AYURVEDA. You'll learn how to take back your time, streamline your biorhythms for more energy and more flow. And I'll actually also get into how do you declutter your life, your home, and open up the field of living in a clarified space. You want to own the power of your constitution, and you want to live in a lean and fit and fat metabolizing body. So check it out. Go to yogahealer.com/Ayurveda, and you'll get into a free video training. There's 4 videos. I just loved creating this training. I really just spoke from my heart. The first video is all about how to design your body and design your dream life. The second one's on the wisdom of yoga in your body and what that feels like. And the third video is on your deep health and exponential abundance. And the fourth one, you'll have to tune in to find out. It's all at yogahealer.com/AYURVEDA, Ayurveda. Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, a lot of people they don't understand this transparency, this transparency of physiology and being that we want to be more transparent in the summer. We want to be less insulated. We want to insulate our digestifier less so that we don't overheat. And it's so confusing now because so many people, I know when I've kind of gotten out of my little Teton mountain life. And in the summer, I'm often at these business workshops and I'm in this like 55, 60 degree AC. It's 100 degrees outside, whether I'm in like Texas or Arizona or whatnot. And a lot of people, this is their day in and day out reality, that they're in an AC building 40 hours a week. They're overweight, right? Because they're working a desk job and they're not that active and they got to commute to work and they just don't have that much time when it's, just the day in and day out grind. And it's really hard for their physiologies to adjust. So they're packing extra weight into summer already. And then it makes them feel even worse, right? Because then you like walk outside in summer and your whole body's trying to expand and dissipate heat. And they're adjusting from 60 degrees inside to 100 degrees outside. And like, the sense of getting people on schedule to like, hey, you got to go into summer light. Like you want to go into summer light. You want to stay light in summer. If you're going to pack some extra pounds, save it for fall and winter, right? But like at least wrap your mind around, like commit to that at least to give yourself a break. But what else can people do that are in, they're in that situation now where they're packing an extra 20, 30 pounds. They step outside, they sweat, they feel like a pig. They just like sweat, they expand, they feel every ounce of overweightness. And then they go inside and they get hungry, right? Their digestive fire then like wakes up again because it's cold out because it's 55 degrees inside, which feels like it's cold out. And then there's this crazy cycle.
And, boy, you said so much and there's so much to comment there. When people are indoors, it turns out that what makes our melatonin surge at nighttime is the amount of sunlight we get during the daytime. So people don't think about it. People think melatonin is just for you to go to sleep. Melatonin is the most powerful, oldest hormone on the planet. It's 3 billion years old. It's the regulator of 12 other different hormones in the body. And it is perhaps the most important hormone because what it does at night, well, it gets you to sleep. It's like the janitor comes in, detoxifies you and cleans you out and scrubs your intestinal microbiome, protects you from breast cancers and osteoporosis. And the studies go on and on and on. I just did a podcast with a melatonin researcher and the research that's being done is mind-boggling. So when the sun sets at say 6 o'clock and you're up till 11, you're basically telling your body, don't produce any melatonin until you actually go to sleep. When you're inside in your office, that produces about 400 lux, which is a measure of intensity of light in your office. Well, the outside is about 3 to 10,000 lux. So when you're in your office sitting there working, you're not getting enough bright light to completely shut down the melatonin levels during the day. So you get sleepy during the day, and there's good science to back that up. So then when you go to bed at nighttime, you've been producing a little melatonin all day long, so there's just not enough to deliver the janitor and the cleaning agents to come in there and clean you out at night. So we lose that ability. And when you have all this sort of extra light into the night, all winter, all summer, the sun sets and we're still up till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, that tells the brain what? Hey, the light is getting longer, and therefore famine is the next thing to come around the corner. So you better start pigging out and eating because famine's coming. So we are telling our body, just with the simple light-dark cycles, to pig out and gain a ridiculous amount of weight because we're desperately, millions of years of evolution have told us that those lights that are on all night or whatever, and particularly blue light on your cell phone, which blocks melatonin directly,
right?
It tells you to go eat more. So one of the major reasons for us to, and it's sort of crazy that it goes on. And when you have longer light during the day, it suppresses melatonin, which decreases your ability to make serotonin because serotonin is made after melatonin. So you have less serotonin. So then you're sort of anxious because you have less serotonin. And then the body goes, I need a reward chemistry hormone, which means that I start looking for more things to get satisfied. And at the same time, you actually suppress melatonin because you're up all night. You actually increase your sex hormones. So it's sort of a crazy combination. If you tie this cocktail together with less melatonin, less janitor, clean, scrub, and detoxify you, more sex hormones, more dopamine, which is your reward chemistry, means I want something, and you have more sex hormones, and you have serotonin producing anxiety, that is a dangerous combination of chemicals, which never existed until we decided to turn the lights on for the last 50, 60 years, all the way into the wee hours of the night. It's sort of crazy. And that's one of the, I've been writing a ton about this lately because I'm just so passionate about the understanding of the circadian science. and how Ayurveda was so much about that. And now we're beginning to see the science says, whoa, that was really dangerous, what we're doing right now. But nobody gets it. Nobody just think, oh, I can stay up late and I go to bed, whatever. It's a really dangerous thing, and it might not hit you until you're 50, 60, 70 years old. And that's when you want to feel really vital and really healthy. You don't want to be in your hospital.
But it is hitting people. I mean, everyone feels fat and bloated and can't digest food, and their kids are fat and bloated and can't concentrate. And so, I mean, right? It's bad. Right. It's pretty bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they did a study at the University of Colorado, Boulder. They took healthy Boulderites, right? All ripping, triathlete type and the triathlete types. And they found that their melatonin levels were all over the place. They were not being produced at night. They were surging during the day. They took them on a camping trip and they reset their melatonin clock by no artificial light, no cell phones, for a week in the mountains, just camping with the sun, up with the sun, and down with the sun. And their melatonin levels and their circadian cycles completely reset. In just no artificial light weekend going camping, or even in your house, don't turn any lights on, you can reset your circadian rhythms by 70%. So there's things that we can do. And I wrote an article just came out yesterday, 10 ways to rebalance your melatonin levels naturally. There's foods you can eat that melatonin in. There's many, many things we can do. And we really need to do it. And one of the big ones is understanding the seasons and what nature is providing in each season to keep the right bugs, which tell the brain what season it is. It's all part of this incredible invisible intelligence that we're just beginning to understand.
Yeah. So if you lived in Arizona or Texas or whatnot, would you run the AC inside your house or not? Like, how would you deal in the summer?
Well,
because plus I hear that, I just read in Men's Journal this, it was Men's Health, and it was just an article on climate change and how like a lot of cities are getting they're going above 130 degrees now. Right. So it's obviously getting hotter. So how do people mitigate what's natural?
Airplanes can't even take off in that temperature. Like in Phoenix, they had to close the airport a couple of times because you can't get enough lift when it's that hot. It's sort of crazy. When it's that hot, you have to definitely protect yourself because you'll die. So, but I think that cooling it down to 68 degrees is an extreme reaction to 100-degree heat. We need to start to, and that's why I love people who live in these tropical areas where they don't really need heat in the winter or air conditioning in the summer, because they're more connected to those rhythms and they get the temperature. It's a very interesting thing you bring up about temperature doing it. I've been reading a lot about light making these connections, but I'm very curious to see what temperature does. And I'll dig into that a little bit and write about that, because I think it's another fascinating piece of the puzzle is what temperature does to our circadian rhythms to let us know it's feast or famine or what's really happening.
Yeah. Yeah. My sense is, just from having experienced, just living it subtropically in Mexico half the time, is when he's like, when you're at the right body weight for that climate and you're eating the regional foods, you get to a point where your body's just not really, it's so energy efficient. It's so not in that inefficiency of being too hot for the outside temperature.
And in those experiences, think about what happens to your appetite, when you're in those hot climates.
You barely need to eat.
Right, exactly. Even though you're out in the sun and you need to drink, but you're not really that hungry, so you eat much less.
You have a coconut.
Right.
And that gets you along. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the ketogenic diet and the bulletproof diet and these very, very high fat diets that are really low in fruits, right? So a lot of people crave fruit in the summer, but they're on the ketogenic diet. So now they're depriving themselves of the watermelon, right? Because they're trying to do this really low carb. So they're also not getting that sweetening, cooling, chill out, have a good time experience of eating watermelon in the summer, right? And they might be putting in a lot of oil into their coffee, right? And then drinking that. So what's going on with all that? What's your, where's that going to go for the biohackers?
It's a pendulum swing that has just, it always, I wish the pendulum would just stop in the middle, but it never does. It just swings and crashes into the wall over here, and then it crashes into this wall over here, which is super high processed carbohydrates. And that was really bad because they were processed foods, thus the Grain Brain book and all these anti-wheat books. And then crashes now into grains are bad, they're poisonous, so therefore you should eat nothing but meat and vegetables. And so what we're doing that. So here's what happens. A meat and vegetable diet is a starvation diet. That's what a ketogenic diet is. You're not getting any sugar or glucose or starches, so you're getting all your fuel from your own fat. you're forcing your body to burn your own fat. That generally happens one time a year for 4 months during the springtime, where you ran out of your grains, you ran out of your beans, now you're sitting there like digging up burdock root trying to make a tea in the spring. And that's a very austere, low-fat time of the year, forcing you to burn your fat and detoxify you. Perfect for those 4 months of the year. But if you put the body in a famine situation where it's forced to burn its own fat for a year or 2 years or 3 years, now you've created a severe starvation emergency. And that is why most people who do that find themselves having real problems. They either fall off that diet and binge and create real problems, but the diet is so acidic, it's a very harsh diet for us to sustain for the long term. I mean, the Atkins diet was sort of thrown out of favor because of the kidney damage people were having. You can't stay in ketogenic for a very long time. It's a great way to lose weight, but in our culture, it's so weird. Everybody wants to lose ripped. Everybody wants to have those perfect abs. And if you're not ripped with 9% body fat, then you're not in shape. But if you're getting there by completely ignoring the circadian rhythms and circadian cycles, you're playing with fire. And yeah, the fruits are harvested in the fall or in the late fall to help us, to cool us down. The apples cool us down. You eat enough fruit, enough apples at the end of the summer, you're going to walk around with loose bowel movements for the month of October, which they do in the Northeast and Northwest because that's what they grow and that's what they eat. Apple pie, apple butter, apple everything. And they have loose bowel movements to dissipate the heat, to get the heat out of their body. And if you don't get that heat out, that heat of pitta of summer will turn to dryness. And the dryness in the winter naturally increases. You go from hot and dry in the summer to cold and dry in the winter. And if you don't get rid of the heat, the dryness increases. And now you're super dry in the winter. Sinuses dry, intestinal tract dry, joints become dry, get constipated, colds and flus because of the reactive mucus from the excess mucus produced because you got so dry, because you completely ignored Mother Nature. And now your joints are irritated, your intestinal skin is dried out, you're constipated. And we know, right, in Ayurveda that Vata is the last life cycle. It's the last one, right? And you want to ward off the impact of Vata in your life if you're trying to stay youthful as you age. And what we do every year is we just keep amping up the Vata, amping up the dryness. And that's not going to play well in your 60s and 70s. It doesn't play well now, as you mentioned before, but it's definitely going to hit hard when you actually enter into that Vata life cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
It is crazy. I think for people to realize though, it's like, yeah, it is crazy. It's really crazy right now. And a lot of the big solutions are really simple. Just like getting a lot more daylighting in your life, like exploring your ecosystem and getting a little bit more organized about your gardening and your kitchen gardening. And, it's like bringing the sanity home. To me, it's so simple. My kid was, the other day, I thought it was so funny because I ate a lot of invasive weeds. And I do use the dehydrator and I make powder so that in the winter I have local teas and whatnot year round. And she's like, Mom, there's all this thistle over here. Like, get your scissors, And to me, I'm like, yeah, kid. It's like where she's aware of different plants in her ecosystem. She knows what's edible, right? I mean, and it's not like we're that eco crunchy either, but it's just a natural part of our lifestyle to be connected. And to me, like, that's the basics here. It's like, get connected to the sun, like get connected to, is it hot outside? Does your body want to feel lighter? Like get connected to, in the summer, it feels better to exercise not in the heat of the day, and just like getting connected back into what feels good is good.
And a lot of people might be thinking, yeah, this sounds logical, but, the paleo diet is backed by science. And let me help people understand. If you talk to an anthropologist, any anthropologist, and I've spoken to Harvard anthropologists, and they'll tell you flat out, there's nothing paleo about the paleo diet. The Paleolithic people did not eat meat and vegetables. They had about 45% of their diet as starch, according to the most profound Harvard researchers who did all this. So to actually say that this is some Paleolithic thing and it's our ancient ancestor, they didn't do this. In my book, Eat Wheat, I found science that shows that we've been eating wheat for 3.5 million years. They found gluten in the teeth of ancient humans from wheat and barley 3.5 million years ago. They found that those ancient people could gather enough wheat berries from the grasslands of Africa, which cover the entire continent, in just 2 hours to feed them for the entire day. And they also found that they only ate the ripe wheat berries. They found green wheat berries that they didn't actually eat. They only ate the ripe ones, which means they ate it when it was in season, which is just a beautiful concept. And we have millions of years, and that's starch. And of course, you got to think, now, wait a minute. This is really important people to understand. We, as human beings, 1 to 2 million years ago, they're not 100% sure, we developed a gene to specifically allow us to digest starch. It's called amylase. We didn't make our own amylase 5 million years ago. Somewhere around 2 million years ago, we started making our own. Why in the world would our human body start making a gene to make its own amylase? Chances are it was because we were eating something that amylase was required to digest, which is starch and wheat and grain. And that's exactly what we have. We have an enzyme for digesting starch. So to say that we shouldn't eat it, when we actually adapted an enzyme 1 to 3 million years ago, they don't really know when. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And there's just no science to support it, but it does make you burn fat. It does rip you. It does make you look good in American style, looking good. But by God, long term, it's definitely going to cause some real problems. And no one wants to look into the future. They just want to look at how do I get ripped today? And that's the real problem.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of like an integral theory, how they say like everyone's got a piece of the puzzle, but very few people have have an idea of like the entire puzzle or the entire map. And, it's like that, right? We see that so much. I know you've written a ton about this of like when there's a new diet fad, just like look at like which season it's optimized for, like what part of like what time of life, what diseases and what disease patterns is it optimized for? And we can start to then have a much bigger view of the map and get less, pulled into that certain little avenue of it.
Right.
Well, John, thanks so much. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you again. Any closing thoughts?
I give you permission to eat fruit in season. No, I really, I'm so passionate about this, and it's so logical, and it's so nice that that people are actually listening and getting the message. And I think this knowledge is it is the future. The scientists say that circadian medicine will revolutionize medicine as we know it. And that's what Ayurveda has been doing for thousands of years. And what I try to do is just make it in English, translate it to folks, bring the science to it and say, hey guys, you have something been around for 1,000 years and now you have science to back it up. I think we should at least look at that. And so that's what I love to do. And that's what I write about at lifespot.com. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. All right, thanks for tuning in to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show next week. Actually, this Thursday, we have one of my course members, Amanda Hemington, who she talks a lot about what's going on with work. It's a very down-to-earth, like work, teamwork, adjusting to a new job kind of conversation. A lot of insight there. So it's a slow, deep conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And then next week, we have Dr. Eric Grasser back on the Yoga Healer Real Life Show, followed by JJ Virgin, woohoo, on Dharma and Dollars. Thanks for being a Yoga Healer Real Life Show listener. And be a collaborator. Send me in a question or a comment at yogahealer.com/ask. You can record it right on your phone and it'll get to me. How fun. Bye.
Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman. Yoga Healer.